Welcome to Don't Call Me Caddy with Leilani, Jillian, and our very special guest, Dr. Phil Dion from the DVM, the Complaints Director and Deputy Registrar for the province of Alberta. Thank you so much for being here, Phil.
It's great to be here. When you guys told me about the idea the other evening, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to get in and, get the word out about what we do at the ABVMA. And, when we talk about being about complaints, they have an opportunity to get some messaging out there to help members deal with complaints. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most important things, I experienced this in financial services too, is I'm so fearful of getting the call, hey, you're being audited, or someone is making a complaint against you. And I think the more that we can learn about that process, the less scary it is. Because I think you're a scary person. I think you're Phil,
Yeah.
right? And I think we as professionals have that concern in any industry. We're not perfect. We're humans.
Oh, I've got a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
Over the years, when I've been in this position, it's been kind of a mission of mine. I've said that to council repeatedly that, we invest a lot in front to try to talk about complaints. The theory being the more we talk about it, the more our members understand, the less fear there'll be, right? That's the approach we've taken. I try to balance that though, because there's sometimes people talk too much about complaints, right? And I think a lot of our members even, when they're practicing, they lose sight of why they're in practice, to try to deliver great services, help the pets, help the people, and they're fearful about a complaint, and that really takes away from the whole purpose, right? I think if you're shooting for that bar, you're really missing the whole point, right? But we put a lot of resources. We try to talk to all our new members, registration day, and that's also said until we have a member that's either engaged in the committee work and gets to see what goes into the process firsthand, or heaven forbid, a member actually ends up being part of the complaint process. They experience it themselves. They don't really understand until you're into it, right? So,
I can tell you, one of my good friends is an ER doctor, and when they were a new grad, first year out, got a complaint, and I was one of the first calls because they didn't know what to do. They were so fearful. They were heartbroken that someone was so upset that they had to go to that level. And it was just a pure, this is medicine. Unfortunately, this happened. And she did everything by the book. But I can tell you that she said she talked to you, and it was less scary when she had that conversation.
No, that's great to hear. That's what I try to do right up front. Some other organizations might just send me the registered mail and go to the mailbox, there's a dreaded letter. We don't do that, right? So we do a lot of the front end work about, looking at the complaint, getting an investigator appointed. We've got all the documents ready to go. So I make a phone call if they've got the information in their hands within a couple of hours, right?
Yeah.
And when I make those calls, I set aside, I've got an hour. I've got all the time in the world for the member to try to, put them at ease, talk about every possible outcome, every step along the way, just to guide them through. And then at the end, I say, look, I dumped a whole lot of information on you. You call me, right? And a lot of members, by the time that conversation ends, they're thanking me for my time, right? So the ones that I know I've made a connection with, I feel good about. The ones where they're still kind of quiet at the end, where they're really upset, I kind of regret that, but I've done the best I can. One of the things I started doing, when you say, Jillian, that, this person called you, I really encourage members to reach out to their support network, right? ABVM, we've got a member assistance program. I talk about that a lot, that our members can reach out and get access to professional counseling. But more than that, to talk to somebody in the practice, a senior veterinarian, somebody that's been on a committee, somebody that's been through the process, or their financial advisor. It's perfect. That's what they need to know, that they're not alone. Your other comment about, this is medicine, right? And I've started to adjust some of the messaging when we're talking to veterinarians, let's say at Reg Day, to try to get through to members. And we can say it repeatedly and shout it from the rooftops, but it's hard for, our veterinarians and technologists to accept. They're largely very compassionate people, type A personalities. They wear all this stuff, but to be able to say you're not perfect, right? Stuff's going to happen. This is medicine. This is living systems. You're not going to be in control all the time, right?
Yeah, and the alternative being that, we aren't a regulated profession. We don't want it that way either, right? I mean, if I see it as that's sort of what holds us accountable to be able to practice medicine to the best of our ability, because my license is at risk every time I'm practicing.
Yeah, yeah, and I try to get that message out to the members too,
Yeah.
right? I bring it back to a lot of time we'll hear the role of the regulator is to protect the public interest. And I know there's a lot of misunderstanding about what that means.
Yeah.
And I've gone to the extent to tell members it does not mean that the AVMA advocates or advances the interest of the individual complainant. That's not what it's about. It's about the public in general, all the people out there that might consume veterinary services, about making sure that they get an appropriate level of care. And if we go survey our membership, they want the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so that's what we do. And we, as the AVMA, which is different from some single-purpose regulators, we really upfront about we'll support our members, technologists and veterinarians, helping them be the best they can be, which ultimately gets the public protected because they get good services. So when we do things like put on CE events, or we have a members magazine, or we have a member assistance program, that all supports our membership to give quality services, our members to be well, and ultimately serve the public interest. That's what it's all about.
Well, I think with the more time I've spent with members in the AVMA over the last 2 years, there's been this really big progression about educating non-members of the community, right? Just Canadians in general, and focusing on the overall wellness of vets and techs in Alberta, which I think is a huge part of this, because there's so much stigma in the vet med industry that is just escalated by the media, by misunderstanding, right? And you guys are doing a wonderful job trying to just help everyone.
Yeah, we really focus on that shift in society. About the acceptance of talking about mental health and supporting mental health for our members too. And that's one of my messages for members when I first called them. Members they're going to take that complaint personally, and we try to tell them people are coming for help. They're usually not at their best. They're in a tough spot. But more than that, I think there's a general trend in society where you can still blame coming out of COVID, affordability, even the current geopolitical climate, that sort of thing. People are angry, right?
Yeah.
And some clients, like your friend, she said she did everything right. And I get that sense when I talk to the members. They'll go through, and it's kind of like they go into rounds mode, and they start talking all about the case, and they can hear the confidence in their voice. And I love it when I hear that. I say, well, you're going to have no problem telling your story to a panel of your peers. You'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
But notwithstanding, they did everything right. That client is what drove the complaint.
Yeah.
And I use these words too to members. What do they know? What do they know about veterinary medicine? Nothing, really.
Mm-hmm.
They just know there was some outcome that didn't satisfy them. We're the avenue, and we're just really fortunate that we're able to self-regulate.
Yeah.
And it's a peer-reviewed process, right? So we put our members in front of the other members. The client, you're the informant. Thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Yeah.
We'll handle it from here.
Yeah, well, and when I was in the clinical practice, I loved using it as a tool, actually, for those clients that I couldn't get off the phone, right? We're talking in circles here. And I just felt really confident in the team and what we had done, and with the ABBMA complaints process, that I would use it as a tool all the time to say, you know what, we've talked about this extensively. If you still feel like there was some wrongdoing here, I'm going to give you the information for how to lodge a complaint with our regulatory body. And I think that's just speaks to how well the ABBMA has done to educate the members about, if this is a process that is peer-reviewed, if you feel like you've done everything right, you're going to have no problems.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've used that before, right? I tell members that once you spend that time, and there is a bit of an expectation that if a client comes to a member, whether it's a medical director of the practice or an individual veterinarian is trying to get something resolved, there's been an expectation that the veterinarian will take some steps, reasonable steps, let's say, right? But I remember a case where it was a board certified specialist dealing with a bad outcome in a case, and she had spent, and I believe her, over 8 hours meeting with this person to try to get things resolved. At that point in time, she tapped out and said, look, if you got anything further, send it to the DVM. The other part of that is, I've heard some horror stories about what members are subjected to by clients, right? Family members screaming and yelling and crying and berating. And I've actually observed some of those because I'll get involved, maybe attend a meeting or something where they're trying to work something out. And the one thing I can assure members is that the AVMA process is going to be very professional.
Yeah.
We're going to extend a lot of dignity and grace to the members, no matter where it goes, even if it goes to a hearing, right? Very professional, and nobody's going to be screaming at the members when they go through our process, unlike your clients that might do that.
Yeah, true.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Can you comment on what are some of the statistics in terms of when a complaint is brought to the AVMA, how many of those actually turn out to launch an investigation or even further?
I think I can speak to the stats we have that were in the 2024 annual report. I don't have them in front of me, but I've talked about them a lot. Like I said earlier, we invest quite a bit up front about trying to make sure that the complainant, when they call the office, because a lot of times we'll have contacts with potential complainants even before a formal letter goes in. And what we do is we make sure they're aware of their right to file a formal complaint. We're very careful that it's never seen to be either encouraging a member of the public to complain or discouraging them. But we present the options of the formal complaint, talk about what the process is, but we also present the option of, have you thought about trying to resolve this directly with the practice? So, that works a lot, right? Our members will engage in those conversations and understand the demands of the client. A lot of times those get resolved. That investment up front and the good work of our members in trying to, get these things fixed, and there's a lot of that goes on and we never know about. Keeps our complaint numbers down, right? So in 2024, we had, I think it was about 69 complaints come in, right? Now, if that was based on around 50 some letters, right? Because sometimes we'll get a letter that has more than one complaint generated. So that's out of our membership. That's like about 0.1% of the members that have such a complaint, right? And then generally speaking, of those 65, 70 complaints, the vast majority of them will go to investigation. And that's a key point that I like to stress with members is our investigations are not about let's identify the charge and then go get the investigator to prove it. It's about let's just go collect all the information, right? So we do an investigation in most of those. And the biggest part of that is notifying the member who's been complained about and giving them the opportunity to respond, right? And that's really what it is. That's like a principle of justice. Somebody that's been complained about has to be given the opportunity to tell their side of the story. Now, usually our members here, I have to respond, right? It's an obligation rather than an opportunity. But, and there is an expectation that the member's going to participate in that process. So we'll have the investigation proceed, and those can be all over the map. We've got some investigations, complaints are pretty narrow, right? They're pretty tight. And there's others that they grow legs and arms and other heads and stuff like that. So they can get quite complicated.
I was going to say, so is there something, like especially for new grads coming out, or even like vets that maybe want to up their compliance game, if you will, like are there steps that they can do to help with that process, whether it's in like charting, note taking? You know what I'm going with this?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll take a little bit of a departure here. I got a lot more to say about stats, but in the medical record piece, medical records have been an issue forever. And we've seen a trend over time where I think a lot of the new graduates, like I said earlier, don't practice to avoid a complaint. Don't be writing novels in your records to guard against a complaint, right? There's no question, contemporaneous, make your records in a timely manner, and complete records are really going to help if you're subject to a complaint. It's not going to keep a complaint from happening. If the client's going to complain, they're going to complain. anyway. Definitely we've got some activities ongoing at the DVM to try to help members understand how to properly keep a medical record. Really should be focusing on how do I show that I've done and document the care that's been provided, and how is that going to support continuity of care? The next veterinary professional picks up the record, they can know where the case is at and bring that forward. Those records really need to be concise, right? 3 or 4 pages of type, nobody's going to read that, right? That was actually a subject of one of my webinars we did recently around dismissed complaints, was looking at an actual record that was made where the complaint was dismissed, where the committee knew exactly what the veterinarian had done, accurately documented informed consent from the owner declining to do certain procedures, but yet it was a really short, concise record, right? That's really what members need to pay attention to.
So you don't want anything written in crayon?
No crayon.
You don't want novels?
We don't want probes.
So no one
This
can
is not
author here.
we're not getting an award for,
Can you write a poem?
no poems.
Sorry, what else do you have to say about stats?
Oh, lots of stuff
Yeah.
about that. So everything goes to investigation, members involved in the process. And then the report goes to the complaint review committee. So the complaint review committee is very hard-working committee. They have a lot of meetings. Like they meet for a while there. It's like every second week, then they'll see 3 or 4 cases during those meetings. About 80% of the cases that they review will be dismissed.
Wow.
80%. Yeah. And
That's massive.
that's held true, right? And that just reflects that, again, it's the complainant is bringing something forward. In many cases, again, what do they know?
Yeah.
There's no question. I don't mean to demean that because it's very significant for them, right? And we as a regulatory body, like any profession, we have to have this process where if a member of the public thinks there's been a bad outcome, they have the opportunity to complain. So it's very important, but again, it's not well informed, right? Until it gets in front of a panel of peers, that's where the decision is going to be made, right? Yeah, so 80% get dismissed.
That's incredible. So would that be, do you think that's across Canada, or is it things that you are doing at the DVMA that is helping keep those numbers low?
We've got a national data project ongoing, and we do see in about the 73% range. That's pretty consistent across the country. Now, you have to recognize there's differences in the legislation and the approaches of all the regulators. I think what we do up front keeps the absolute numbers down, is what it does. And it really makes sure our resources are going where they're needed best. Like, we're not dealing with a whole bunch of complaints, let's say, about problems with communication or fees that could have been resolved outside of that, right? So we get to keep the overall cost down, keep the resources focused where they need to be. But the actual percentage is pretty consistent across the other jurisdictions. Yeah.
So I want to talk about, because we talked about being human, these complaints will happen. So is there anything that past Phil has done or lived experiences there that you think future Phil as Deputy Registrar / Complaints Director would maybe get a little slap up with?
Absolutely. So I was a practicing veterinarian for about 12 years before I became complaints director, and there's no question, like you say, my lived experiences set me up really well for this job, be it in practice. It's nice that I can do something real, totally different in practice, obviously, but still use my education and experience every day. There have been a few members at times on different committees or even subject of complaints that might have challenged me as to what I did pre-role as complaints director. And I take that for what it's worth, right? I mean, I've grown a pretty thick skin in the role over the years. And definitely there are cases where, I recall them quite vividly, right? I think that's for all of us. The misses and the failures, they stick with you, right? Forget about all the
You
great
learn
stuff.
from those.
But you learn from them, absolutely, and that's the outcome that we look for in this process, right? I mean, you asked about the dismissed ones. That other 20% that goes forward, those get referred to a hearing. That's the scariest prospect, right? You think that's tough to get the call to say, hey, there's a complaint. When you got to make the call to say, hey, this has been referred. Those are tougher, right? But we've developed this process, and our legal counsel that I work with, Karen Smith, she's been repeatedly says that she's so proud of this process that the DVM has developed, where we create an environment where a member who's facing allegations of unprofessional conduct can come in and meet with a panel of their peers and have a eyeball-to-eyeball conversation about how'd you get here? We can do better. We expect you to do better, and this is how, right? Some of those conversations can be pretty raw, but a lot of those conversations end with the member understanding how they got here and a plan as to how that's going to be addressed to make sure they do better going forward, right? Because that's what it's all about. We learn from it, we can do better. Absolutely.
Well, and so on the topic of doing better, so there's all sorts of initiatives that the AVMA is working on, and the vet industry in general. So what advice would you give to a veterinary professional who has an innovative idea that they think could really help the profession, but maybe they're bound by some of the current regulations? And what role does the regulator play in there in being able to, work with these innovators while at the same time trying to stay with regulators?
I think one of the privileges we enjoy is that of self-regulation, right? And that privilege is given to us by government, right? So this privilege, so we regulate in the public interest. But we've got that latitude to decide how is the profession collectively going to deliver services, and that's a great privilege that we have. It's interesting, when I think of a lot of examples about how things have changed, right? Because even though my feel like age is I'm still in practice, I've been around for a while, but and we see a lot of changes, right? I mean, the role of veterinary technologists in practice, that's really evolved over the last decade, right? Taken off. And that's required a lot of conversations that our council that sets the direction for the association and would establish, professional standards or make changes to regulations or bylaws or whatever, are very receptive to these innovations, right? So the veterinary technologist engagement is one of those. I think in my time, we've reviewed that roles of RVT students and auxiliaries to now delegation. I think I've seen that, under review 4 times at least, right? So it's continually evolved. The use of AI in practice, right? That's changing weekly. There's other organizations that have come out with statements, and it's been a topic of the discussion at our council table, and we're seeing some of the developments, particularly one that I think is great. We're hearing wonderful feedback from practices on are the medical record scribe programs that are based on AI and how those are benefiting practice. And I think we need to be open to that. For the individual member, we've got legislation where members can bring resolutions forward at AGM. And I don't know that doesn't get used very often. What we encourage instead is an open, welcoming kind of approach of council to receive proposals, to consider changes that might be an opportunity for the profession, right? There's no question we do have to hold true to some of the foundational pieces of how we regulate in terms of who's allowed into the profession, what's the scope of practice, titles, supervision, that sort of thing. But within that, we're given quite a bit of latitude where we can explore different opportunities to make sure we continue to advance the profession. And I think our members have seen it in our call for awards. Actually, we made a shift to one of the awards where we took it from, I think it used to be called the Communication Award, to now it's actually looking and celebrating innovation in veterinary practice. So we're quite happy with that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We might know someone who's actually.
I might know someone. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. You talked about how you develop thick skin from what people have said.
Yeah.
Especially being a complaints director now. And I watched an Instagram reel the other day that said some of the hardest people to find in the world nowadays are people that have thick skin and their hearts are still very soft. And I think knowing you actually have that thick skin but a very soft heart and empathetic heart, which is what makes vet medicine so special. Because I think Canadians don't recognize how, you can take a lot and still be, I want to help you and support you.
Yeah.
So if there's something for Canadians, what could you tell them that are non-members
Members of the public.
Yeah, members of the public.
Members of the public. Well, two of the things that come to mind when we talk about how I approach this role. One is that I've got quite a network of people around me, right? And the position of our members, so veterinarians and technologists that sit on these committees and do the work and make the tough decisions, that insulates me quite a bit, right? So the decisions of the committee, that's tough work. That's a really tough work, right? So I move some stuff around. I help support the committees, but they've got the tough job, right? Having those difficult conversations. The other support I have is work with legal counsel. She's got quite an ability to have difficult conversations and being able to deliver messages in a very, matter of fact, flat, direct way that is still empathetic. It's a skill I've developed and learned over time. The other approach that I've taken is really trying to understand what I'm calling members that they're going through, like you said right at the start, like your friend, right? They're very shocked, they're stressed. I'm calling them in the middle of their day. It's just the worst fear is coming true. I recognize that they're not at their best, and I don't take any of that personally. There was a lawyer actually used this term in a presentation I was at. It was about, be hard on the issues but easy on the people, right? So that's what, we don't focus on the member, really focus on the circumstance of what happened. We talk about the conduct, it was that day, right? But it shouldn't really reflect on the member. So those are all the things that I can take with me when I'm in making those calls and doing the work. And I take the same thing for members of the public too, right? Some of them are that call, they're having a really tough time too, right? And when I'm talking to them, I set aside half an hour, 40 minutes, and I just say, tell me what's up, and just let them go for as long as they need, right? So, and I think that's a big part of just helping the whole process along. Again, looking after our members, looking after the public, and it's all about making sure that there's quality veterinary medicine up there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Phil. It was a great conversation.
Well, we still have one question.
Oh, we do.
We do have a
one.
question.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's two.
Okay.
So, the first one, who are the three people that have helped shape your career? Like, from where you were to where you are, that you were like, I wouldn't be here without them. Who are those three people that you were like, thank you for that?
Well, the first one I have to talk about is a former registrar, actually, veterinarian that hired me into the job, Dwayne Landels. I had the opportunity to work with him, not as long as I wanted to. He stepped back from the role as registrar about 3 years into the job, but I still remain in contact. I still consider a mentor, probably the biggest mentor in the veterinary profession I had for my career. So he was really instrumental. I had a junior high school math teacher, who also coached me hockey. His name's Frank Peters, and I really think, because I coached minor hockey quite a bit too, and I really think he influenced me in terms of being direct, being pretty clear, and he was a really, really large man, really gruff, but very kind, right? So I see some of your comments earlier. I think I've taken that from him, and then my parents. I'm not going to pick between mom and dad, sorry. And my parents too, in terms of just how hard they work. Both of them still today, very active, in the late 70s and early 80s. So
Well, your dad was a birthday this
yeah. This fall, I miss Cam West to go home for his 80th, but yeah, they're still going, and yeah, they're very important and supportive throughout my career. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the last question. So music plays a very important role in so many people's lives. That's one thing that brings us all together, right?
Yeah.
So what would be your walk-in song, your funeral song, and the win song for you?
And the win song?
The win.
Yeah. Something great happens in your life. Whatever. Like graduate university. get
Okay,
the job.
my walk-in song,
Yeah.
Lose Yourself by Eminem.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's got it.
No way. No
We
way.
almost had rapping on yours.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do that. I went for a run one time. I used to run. I was down in Panorama. I went out for a run one day, and one of the helicopters came real low as I was over top, as I was listening to the song running in. It just stuck with me. It was great. Funeral song. Tom Cochran, I Wish You Well. It's a good one.
Great.
And then Win song.
Yeah.
I don't know. That one.
Something last time with the wind song.
The Win song.
Maybe they're not playing songs for you.
We play songs for others.
I really like Sympathy for the Devil. I like that one. I don't know if that'd be an important. It's a Rolling Stones song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like
Well, we'll add it to
Yeah.
the playlist.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it'd be a great Win song, but yeah, it was on my playlist too for running.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. That was fun. It's fun. Yeah.
It was great. So, if you can say for the listeners how they can get a hold of you if they want to learn more about the complaints process, or
Yeah.
Just talk to you as a human.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, probably the easiest is to go to, well, our website's not really great, but we'll look up and change it. DVM.ca, you can search through for the public and complaints. You can find me there. My direct line in my office is there too, to phone. If you phone and leave a message, I'll get back to you, right? If I don't pick up, I do call people back. That's probably my most reliable way of communicating with people. But keep in mind, if it's about a complaint or if it's about something in practice, I'm going to make sure I have a good amount of time to call you back. So I'm not taking 5 or 10 minutes, right? So it might be a day or so before I get back.
Get back to it.
Yeah, make sure that we're not rushing anything. And then my email address is phil.buote@advm.ca.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. That was fun.